Things just took a major turn for the Houston Texans in the NFL draft process. There's new articles that we have to break down about what do the Texans do. I saw this article, and there's a lot of top QB needy teams out there that could trade into the middle of the first round, and the Texans could just trade back and get multiple picks in the middle of the round. So a lot to talk about today. But welcome to Texans Digest. If you're new to the channel, hit that sub button. Appreciate all the support on the past videos. We've been growing. We're talking news. And another article that caught my eye, which actually could be a good possibility. The Texans are kind of best available. There's not necessarily a certain position that they would want to do. And if they can get an extra third-round pick from the Cleveland Browns, for the Browns to trade up and draft their guy in a Jackson Dart or a Quinn Ewers, because they don't have a first-round pick. They could see Shedeur Sanders drop to like middle of the first round. There's a possibility. And the Browns might just say, hey, the Texans are sitting right there. They don't have to pick right now. So I could very well see the Browns being that kind of team to be like, oh, we don't have a quarterback if they don't get a Kirk Cousins or a Dak Prescott, and they just give up a third-round pick to move up 7 spots from 33, I don't know the math there, but 33 to 25. I mean, that's a pretty significant move for the Texans, and to get a third-round pick out of it, I think that would be insane. So moving up 8 spots to get the quarterback of the future, whether it's Jackson Dart, Gary Davenport very well sees it happening. There's a lot of them. Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and I personally think Quinn Ewers is being undervalued. Probably could be a potential second-round pick. I mean, this is just me personally. But you also have Will Howard. I know he's probably later in the rounds. But there's a very good possibility the Texans could just say, hey, let's trade back to 33 and take Donovan Jackson. So I did a mock draft. Another one. I know it's still March, right? You got a few weeks till the draft. I understand. But this was the trade that I could get through. I don't know how we feel. What do we think, Texans fans? Would we give up a fourth for the 94th overall pick in the third round? Kind of towards the end of the third round. But I'm going to explain why it's actually a good idea, because there's a lot of picks that you can get for the player value. And as much as I would like to see a top-tier receiver, there's a lot of depth at receiver. So basically, I had to give up a fourth to get the Browns' third-round pick this year. Yes, I didn't want to give up a fourth. The mock trade said they'll just give up a fourth. I tried to do a fifth. I tried to do a sixth and a seventh. They weren't having it. The Texans also don't have a fifth next year. But that was the trade that went through. Then this was the trade offer that I got at 33, and I think the Texans might consider it. But second, third, and a fourth next year for going up like 50 spots, but 40 spots. But that's pretty crazy. Now, the Texans need to make their picks this year. This is a very important draft. And for some dumb reason, the Browns took a defensive tackle. So I don't see why it would make any sense that they would trade up to take a defensive tackle. Even if they get a quarterback in Kirk Cousins, they should trade up and they should draft a quarterback for the future of their team. Now, Emeka somehow fell to 28. We'll get to that in a second. But as for how the trade panned out, Donovan Jackson sitting right there at 36. Took him in the first round. It made a lot of sense. Now, second round, it's a very difficult process. I ended up taking Jaden Higgins because Trey Harris was not there. Royals was not there. Jalen Royals fell. He did not fall. So the Texans have 3 picks, 89, 94, and then another pick ahead. But there's a lot that they can do. But Holland Pierce out of Rutgers seems to be, he fell somehow to the third round, but this guy's pretty good. I mean, offensive tackle to get in the third round, 6'8", good offensive lineman with his hands. He can be good in the run game, dominant force there. So that was a kind of an idea. Now, as far as the draft went, I was able to get Gunnar Helm at 79. I've seen a couple comments saying we need a tight end, and Helm is not a bad idea, so I picked him up. I did Pierce to be different. I've really liked Ozzie Trapillo. So Boston College tackle, but as far as the other guys available in really right here, the running back, I mean, for the amount of picks that you have in that short span, right, you got 79, 94, and 89. All those 3 picks on the right there. That's pretty important. And the trade kind of gives you that opportunity to get a Scatterbo if he does drop. But I feel like, does it make sense to trade back, not get the wide receiver you kind of want in either Trey Harris or Jalen Royals out of Utah State. So there's a lot of question marks as to, does this make sense? You get an extra pick, yes, but it's at the very end of the third round. So I don't know. I feel like Caserio would consider it. There's definitely some goodness to it. It's just a matter of who's available. And for what we had, it was definitely not the best options in terms of getting past the second round, and your wide receivers that you kind of wanted to go with originally aren't there because of the trade back. Also, you don't have to take a running back at 94. I just don't know what else the Texans really need outside of, we took Helm, we took Scatabo, we took Hollins Pierce. I mean, they took a guard to start the draft. I mean, I don't know. Do you take another wide receiver in the middle of the rounds? I was considering it at 79, where you could take another, wide receiver in the draft, whether it's somebody in terms of who do you go with, right? Who's your guy? You got Tez Johnson, who could potentially fall later in the rounds. And in this mock draft, Jackson Dart didn't even go until pick 88 to the Steelers. So that's pretty crazy. Or pick 83. But regardless, this is the mock that we had. And honestly, I don't know how to feel about it. I'm just trying to get a gauge of, if they do make that trade, is pick 94 that much more valuable than taking a tackle at pick 25? Or this is just I'm trying to get a gauge as to, is this beneficial to the Texans to make a good move, right? So let me know your thoughts. Do the Texans trade back? I feel like a third round pick this year, obviously not giving up that fourth that I did, but it really doesn't make the worst sense in the world. You get an extra pick later in the rounds. You could go with a Jaden Higgins in the second round. Maybe Jalen Royals falls. Maybe Trey Harris falls. If they don't, Higgins is not a bad option. And then if you do fall to the later rounds, maybe 94, you just grab another receiver in terms of you got Tez Johnson, and then you still have your other picks later in terms of your 2 7th rounders and another 5th rounder, to where you don't even have to take Scatbo. You could just take a running back later. You have RJ Harvey, you have DJ Giddens, you have a lot of options later in the draft. So I don't even mind waiting to take a running back until the 5th, 7th round, because the Texans don't have a 6th. But I'm just trying to gauge every option. I definitely feel like Nick Caserio is that kind of GM to where he is not going to go after a crazy name in terms of running back just because it's there. I just feel like the Texans are not going to take a running back, and I know it sounds stupid that I took a running back, but overall, this is what we're looking at for the first 4 or 5 picks, is offense, 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 offense. Reload, either whether it be receiver, guard, tackle, tight end. I don't see them going much defense. They did what they had to do in defense. They got another safety in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They just picked up another linebacker in E.J. Speed. They've just re-signed Derek Stingley. So, I mean, there's so many things that they've already done on the defense to where I feel like they've reloaded. They've got their depth pieces. They're really not going to take many defensive players. Maybe 1 or 2, whether that's defensive line help or cornerback help. But I feel like you also got Jalen Pitre coming off his injury, so there's really not a really concern for me. The only 2 concerns I have is offensive line future. Who's going to be the young guy that steps in? Is it Donovan Jackson? Is it Hollins Pierce? Is it Holland Pierce? Is it Ozzy Trapilo, who we talked about before? But you need a lot. You need a first priority, definitely wide receiver, guard, tackle, tight end, running back, defense. So that's where I stand on terms of needs for this team. Let me know your thoughts about the Texans mock draft. Do you see them trading back? Is this a good idea? I know we talked about the draft so much, but I thought this was an interesting article in terms of something new that we haven't seen. Texans potentially trading back with the Cleveland Browns. Really not a bad idea. But here's the mock draft for you guys. We got about just under a month until the NFL draft. Should be some fun. Can't wait for some football. Got a few months more of the offseason, but appreciate everyone hanging out. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Mike Zanetti, Texans Digest.